My name is Hannah Oliveira, and I have 3 boys. And my second son, his name is Aaron. He was born in 2019. And before I was even pregnant, we were established with another chiropractor, and we saw them the entire pregnancy. So I was really surprised when he was transverse, which means he was sideways in my uterus. And we did everything we could to get him to turn, and he never turned. And so I went into labor, and I had to have an emergency C-section. And unfortunately, the epidural didn't work, so they had to totally knock me out for the whole thing. So I woke up, and Aaron was there. And at this point, we figured, okay, the trauma is behind us. So we take him home, and when he was about 8 days old, he started turning blue. We couldn't figure out why. We held him up to a fan or blew on him. Sometimes he would come back. Otherwise, he was blue. And we just couldn't figure it out. So finally, he wasn't coming back, and we took him to the hospital. And they decided that it was happening because of breastfeeding, because I had been nursing my oldest son while I was pregnant, and so my milk supply was strong, and they said your letdown is too strong and he's choking, and then he's turning blue, and that's what's happening. So their solution was that I needed to stop breastfeeding. Well, that went against everything I believed, so I didn't do that. So they ended up, because he wasn't responding to anything, he was still turning blue, they put us on the PICU floor. And on the PICU floor, they did every test you can imagine, and they eliminated everything from the realm of possibility. It wasn't meningitis, it wasn't like an infection, it wasn't any of these things that they were considering, which is great because it's not these things, but then what is it? Until finally, he had an EEG, and they were able to catch that he had a seizure. And because of that, they were able to diagnose him with apneic seizures, which means he stops breathing, he's turning blue, and there was really nothing they could do to bring him back when these things were happening. We documented 12 in one day at the hospital, and those are just the ones that were documented at the hospital, not the ones that happened before we got there or during different care times. So the care team they were doing everything they could, but like I said, he just wasn't really responding. He had to choose to come back every time, essentially, he was fighting. And as any parent who's had a child in the hospital can tell you, there's no worse feeling than watching your child fight for their life when there's nothing you can do. And at this point, there's really not anything the team could do. So they ended up putting him on a seizure medication, and he was on that for a little bit. So when we left the hospital, right the night before we left, we asked the doctors, what does this mean for him long term? Because he's had all this oxygen deprivation. So is he going to have brain damage? Are we looking at a normal childhood here? Are we looking at, do we need to start considering therapies? What is his life going to be? And they couldn't tell us. So it was a very scary time. And the night before we left, we were listening to our pastor at the time. It was Joby Martin with 1122 was our pastor at that time. And we were listening to him preach a sermon on John. And it was actually the sermon on Lazarus. And he said a verse. It was, this sickness does not lead to death, but it's for the glory of God. And we knew when we heard that verse that Aaron was going to be okay. We didn't know how. We just knew he was going to be okay. And it turned out that God used chiropractic care to heal Aaron. So we went a few days after we got out of the hospital to our chiropractor. And she said, on a scale of 1 to 10, Aaron's atlas is out at a 10. His brain cannot talk to his body. I'm not surprised he was having seizures. So she did a gentle adjustment. And when we got home that day, my mom was blown away because his color had returned, or not returned, he had color for the first time. He looked healthy, and it was the first true improvement we saw in him. He wasn't just not having seizures. That wasn't just our baseline. He was better. He was improving, and we were thrilled. So after about 9 months there, we didn't feel like he was continuing to progress. So I started looking into other kinds of chiropractors, and I learned about the Gonstead method, and I learned about Slancha. So I was the guinea pig, and I was so impressed with Dr. Ben. He knew what he was doing, knows what he was doing, and I felt like this was where we needed to be. So after Aaron's first scan here, Dr. Ben says to me, has he had any more seizures? And I'm like, no, he's fine, and he's not on the medication, but he's good. He said, well, his reading shows that his back is like a towel that's been wrung out, and it's almost like he's like a ticking time bomb, because there's not a lot of communication happening with his brain and his body with this scan, with these results. And I was shocked, because we thought he was improving. And he was improving, but how long was that going to last? So we started the adjustments here, and he really finished the healing process. This is where we felt like, okay, he's finished with the healing process. And we have referred so many of our friends here. As soon as we hear any of our friends are having a seizure, or anyone in our life is having a seizure, we always refer them here or to somewhere that does the Gonstead method if they're not in Jacksonville. Our family does the same. It made a believer of my family. We have so many family members who were very skeptical about chiropractic care, and this was a game changer for all of them. When we came to Slancha, we really did see the completion of his healing, because as he's grown here, he is a completely normal and healthy kid. In fact, very smart, very, like, his body works great. Like, everything is working the way it's supposed to, and then some. Like, when we prayed for healing, we got it. God did not disappoint in his delivery of healing for Aaron. He is a completely healthy and wonderful kid. And whenever we come here, my mom loves it, especially. She calls it his attitude adjustment for he and my other son, because he just illuminates and lights up. And I believe that's because he has seen a chiropractor his entire life. I think that has helped him to have a healthy body and to be able to function optimally. Like, we haven't had to remove any barriers from him, because as soon as he got the healing that he needed from the adjustments, he has had a clear path to have the childhood that we wanted him to have. What do you think of Dr. Ben? I know you always show him your Lego creations. And what does he say about your Lego creations?
They're cool.
He always thinks they're cool.
And good imagination.
Yeah, he says you have a good imagination. I'll tell you, one of your favorite things about your adjustments is when Dr. Ben flies you sometimes. Remember how he picks you up and flies you? Can you tell her how he does that?
He picks me up and he lifts me around.
For what? Why does he do that?
For the end.
For the adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's fun.
What I would tell a parent who was in the same situation that I was in is it is scary, and getting a diagnosis does help, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for your child's health, and you need to figure out the best way for them to be healthy. And when we researched, we believed this was the best way to do that. And not only did we believe it, we've seen it. And this gave us such hope. And we've seen it do that for other parents as well. We have another friend who I ran into, one of them just before I came in here, who brings a child here who was having seizures. And I just saw their mom, and she was telling me that on their, when they went to the neurologist for their scans, they're like, what are you doing? Because this is amazing. I mean, the results that you see with the chiropractic care are so different than what you will see with a traditional medical program, because they're looking to do different things. A traditional medical program, when we were in that for Aaron, they were telling us their goal is to stop the seizures, which is great. That was our goal. But then we want to continue, and that's their goal. When you want to go further than just stopping the seizures, when you want to go further and actually have full healing without medication, and to truly see them have their optimal body and the body that they were created to have, this is how you can do it. Because this allows your body, your child's body, to function the way that God made it to function, for your brain to communicate clearly with your body in the way that allows your body to do what it was made to do. And so I highly recommend it. I bring all three of my children here, and my third child has been here from preconception to while I was pregnant to he came here. This was our first stop after he was born, and it has, to see the difference in them has been incredible. And I cannot say enough good things about seeing Dr. Ben for your chiropractic care. So we're really thankful for Slancha and what they did for our son, how God used them.